Hello, everybody. Here we are once again, and today I've got a topic that some of you are very familiar with. Some of you have experienced it, and for some of you, it's been extremely painful in your life. So, the topic today is on food addiction. Let's have a little look at food addiction. So, what is it, right? What's food addiction? What, just because you overate? Maybe. Now, just take a peek at these pictures. So I've got sugar cane at the top, butter, flour, salt. Now, if I was to offer you a sugar cane, great. You're going to chew on it, take a piece, chew on it, whatever, get a little bit of sweet out of it. But if I was to offer a whole bowl of refined sugar and say, here's your dinner, would that really be appetizing, or would you prefer something else? What about if I offered you a whole bowl? Here's some butter. Would you want that for dinner? Maybe, probably not. What about a whole bowl of flour? Probably not. Or salt. Bowl of salt, here you go, for dinner. Probably not. But now let's mix those things in combinations. We could take maybe, the flour, and the butter and or the oil, whatever kind, and salt. Come up with potato chips, right? I mean, some of those potato chips, that's what they are. They make it into a flour and then they mix it all together. And you say, man, this is really good. Or the other combination that you're all familiar with is the sugars and the butters and the flours. Maybe throw in a few chocolate chips or something, bake it with grandma, and it's delicious. We've got memories associated with these foods too. So it's more complicated than just the food. It's also the memories that go with the food. Did you know there's only a very thin layer between your olfactory gland and your brain, the memory part of your brain? That's why when you smell something, it reminds you of that experience, that relationship. So, what's food addiction? It's characterized by compulsive consumption of palatable foods. Often they're high in fat, sugar, or fat and sugar, or fat and salt, despite any adverse consequences. Like, it's going to hurt you, but you're going to do it anyway, right? It does meet the criteria for the DSM-5 for substance use disorders. However, it's not yet recognized as a food disorder, but they are trying to get that into the DSM. So there are 10 separate classes of drugs in substance use disorder right now: alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, hallucinogens, inhalants, opioids, sedatives, hypnotics, antioxidants, and stimulants, and tobacco. And then substance-induced disorders like intoxication, withdrawal, substance medication disorders, causing direct effects of substances. Let's look at some history of the food addiction. I don't think I have this video actually up here, but you can go onto YouTube and you can find that. It's by Joan Ifland, and she has the history of food addiction there. It's only a 2-minute video, but I don't have it set up to do that right now. But it did start back with the tobacco company back in the 1980s. And we'll get deeper into that. What did they do? So the tobacco company, neuromarketers, neuroscientists that formulate addictive foods, what they did, they used the 5 A's of business addiction model: advertising, availability, age of onset, affordability, addictive product formulations, and the 5 A's of neuromarketing. They teach the brain to crave, They use the same 5 A's in that business addiction model. They use it to sell cigarettes to teens, alcohol to teen girls, opioids to doctors, tobacco and alcohol, now marketing marijuana, vaping, Juul, processed foods to children, and they also use it for diet products. So the shift came. They used the same addiction model as they did for processed foods. Big tobacco bought big food in the 1980s and beyond. R.J. Reynolds bought 85% of Nabisco, General Foods, Kraft Foods, and then controlled 10% of all processed foods. The neuroscientists and neuromarketers, they studied the addictive properties to look at how can we get them the most addicted. How can we do that so that they could sell more, obviously? And they want to get the kids hooked at a really young age. Acquisitions continued to diet foods, such as Simply Good, that product you might be familiar with, or Atkins, Quest, and other processed food companies, their diet companies. So the diagnostic criteria and severity levels. So in application, recovering food addicts can periodically compare their behaviors in recovery with behaviors that they might have engaged in when the food was active. This tool can also be used to assess for severity and determine appropriate recovery plan for the individual. Meeting 2 of the criteria in a 12-month period would be considered an indication of the presence of an addiction, and meeting 6 of the criteria indicates a severe addiction. So number 1 to 6 of 11 criteria for food addiction indicates a severe addiction. Over 80% are severely addicted to processed foods, or over 80% of the people. 73% of the average American diet is processed food. Half of all Americans die from a diet-related disease. So let's look at the criteria. First of all, unintended use. You didn't really mean to do that. You planned, you prepared something else, but then you lost your resolve. Probably you started in the morning really good, and then maybe by noontime you've lost it. Failure to cut back. You lost weight, then you regained. And it just goes like that. It's just, here we go again, up and down, up and down. Increasing use. The tolerance increases. You need more to get the neurochemical hits in the brain. Cravings, which coincides with weight status, altered mood, concentration, and judgment. Use in spite of consequences. You know it's going to harm you, but you use it anyway, right? You know exactly what it'll do to your body, but you use it anyway. You use it for reasons other than hunger. So it's not like, if you're hungry, go ahead and eat. But that's not what it is. You're eating and you're not even hungry. Sometimes you're even in pain and you're still eating. So there's some sort of emotional element to that one. Number 7, failure to fulfill roles. See, it's a very progressive disease. Your relationships, they get affected one way or another. Maybe playing with the kids, you just don't feel like it. You don't feel like going out with your spouse. You're not wanting to go to work. You'd rather kind of stay home. It's very isolating disease, as all addictions are. You do it in isolation because there's a shame element can attach to it. And you don't want anyone to see what you're doing. And over half of them live by themselves. Number 8, activities are given up. Maybe a loss of interest in sports or clubs or life itself. Even a hopelessness can kind of creep in. Those cravings get too intense. And the individual just wants their drug of choice. Of course, is the processed food. The hazardous use. You know it'll have detrimental effects on your health. I mean, eating and driving. I've seen people do it. A bowl of cereal or something on their lap. What are they doing? They're eating while they're driving. Or you drop something and you reach down momentarily to pick it up, some sort of food, and that can cause an accident, sometimes deadly. Trips and falls. Falling asleep while you're eating. I know I've done that. I've been eating, and then and I fell asleep while I'm eating. Food hangovers. You eat way too much, and the next day you feel like, oh, I just don't feel like I can do anything. You might have a headache, who knows with it. Withdrawal. It's 2 to 8 days to work through withdrawal. You could have headaches, irritability, depression, cravings for addictive substances, including sweeteners. So there's a cephalic effect with the sweeteners. It kind of tells your brain that, hey, there's more sweet to come. And so the insulin goes up, and there you go. You start to crave. And it becomes more intense during withdrawal. But then it will subside. Those cravings will subside, kind of make it through the withdrawal period. Time spent on food. So you're thinking about food, planning food, going out to get fast food, hiding food, zoning out, sleeping it off. A lot of time. Some common villains are sugars. So there's this progression with the sugars. You want more because that is getting you this dopamine hit, but then you want more to get the same level of dopamine. It's just not enough. Flour, loss of control and cravings. The gluten, gluteomorphin, attaches to the opiate receptors. Excessive with salt, withdrawal. Dairy has beta-casomorphins, VCM peptides that can have opioid-like properties and attaches to the opiate receptors. It can alter mood, complicates appetite problems. Refined seed oils has a half-life of omega-6 linoleic acid. The primary omega-6 fat that's in vegetable oils is 600 to 680 days is the half-life, sorry. It's roughly 2 years and up to 3 years. Caffeine is a CNS stimulant. It blocks neurotransmitter adenosine, reduces tiredness, increases brain excitability, and it has a half-life of 6 hours. Rats choose sugar and saccharin and over cocaine and heroin. The neural pathways of food addiction. So the neural pathways in food addiction are pretty simple, very similar to those of the substance use disorders. What happens is the brain gets hijacked by processed food substances. Addiction is characterized by changes in brain systems that mediate the experience and anticipation of reward systems responsible for perception and memory, and higher order executive systems underlying the cognitive control. And they intersect, they intertwine. It shapes addictive behaviors, influences how individuals seek pleasure, cope with pain, navigate their emotions. And the addictive voice operates through the limbic system. Affectionately, we just call that the hindbrain. And it's sort of the lizard brain. And that deals with pleasure and intensity. Whereas the recovery voice occurs in the frontal lobe, the decision-making part of the brain. So we've got our arousal pathway, those cues and triggers that seeks out just that pleasure. Numbing pathway, a sedative or analgesic pathway effect. So it numbs emotions, such as falling asleep or food hangovers. Fantasy pathway, just using it to escape from emotions. Perhaps it's anger or lonely or tired or stressed or confused or just excited. So some of the science behind food addiction in the brain. Well, PET scans compare the differences in brain, the dopamine activity in normal cocaine addicted and obese subjects. The reward pathways put out too many craving neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, cannabinoid, opioid pathways, put out so many cravings that they control the behavior. Sort of like a dance partner. The stress pathways are hyperactivated. So cortisol, adrenaline is hyperactivated. Stress activates the addiction activates stress. And these two go over to behavioral center of the brain. They latch onto receptors there and control behavior. They bypass the frontal lobe. So the individual is not actually making their own decisions. It's actually the addiction from the hindbrain that's making those decisions. That frontal lobe, the decision-making part of the brain, is only 2% of the brain. But under the influence of the substance, under the influence of the highly palatable foods, it's difficult and sometimes even impossible to use the frontal lobe. So let's look at the hand of recovery. I use the hand quite often when I'm speaking because it just has the right number of points, 5 points. But in this case, they work together. They need to be together in a community to work well, an immersion community. Like, get yourself soaked in recovery. So the 5 components are, first of all, spiritual. Spiritual is your core being, the very, very essence of who you are. And for that, we use things like affirmations, meditation, maybe connecting with nature, pets, a faith. Then the physical movement, exercise, sunlight, sound, vibrations, singing, grounding, and of course your food plan. The mental, and some of these overlap. You can see that, but that's okay. Mental, brain, exercising your brain. If you don't use it, you lose it. So keep learning. I used to tell my students that the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. So keep learning. Planning, preparing, organizing, affirmations. The emotional component, relationships, past traumas, being present, awareness, make emotions your friends. And then the science behind it all, brain neurochemistry. And then we've got the gut, which is where your food goes and how it connects to your brain. So the gut-brain axis in the central nervous system and the vagus nerve. So basically, all of that has to work together in immersion for recovery from food addiction. Now, these are just some examples of just some techniques to use in recovery. And plus, needing to design a personal food plan. I wonder if I can take myself off here and then maybe view it without me, because I know it's cutting off a lot. Maybe I can't. That's okay. So in the addiction reset community, what we do, we have 15 to 17 hours of recovery programming every day. We do check-in chats, writing hours, various book and video discussions, relationship hours, financial hours, recorded community meetings, extensive library, videos, handouts, book recommendations, learning to have fun without food, just having those reset hours just for fun. Because oftentimes our food was the fun before, so that has to be changed up into something that's healthier and still get a healthy level of the various neurochemicals like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Textbook talk, looking into the science of food addiction, and some study hours for the trainees, those that will become food addiction recovery advocates. And there's 2 levels to that. And then there's homerooms. So it's just a very small group with personal FARA advocate, premium and concierge services for those that want something more intense. Premium would be 15 minutes a day, every single day, Monday to Friday. And then concierge would be 1 hour a month with everything else included. The Holistic Recovery Academy, there's a number of 4-week courses available there. And then the Remission Optimistic Community, That is for people that have chronic conditions that really want to work on their health for the chronic conditions. And we look at various exercises, such as a whoop. What's your wish? What would the outcome be if you got that? What's the obstacle? What's holding you back from that? And then let's make a plan. And that's pretty much what happens within the Addiction Reset community. If you'd like to know more, then come join us. That would be great to have you there. Why is it so hard to recover from this? Well, first of all, it's very available. It's everywhere. Misinformation, lack of skills, weight loss groups have failed. There's pressure from your household members. Addictive foods are woven into every part of society. They're in your family, they're in your business, everywhere you go. People push them on you. There's cues, sights, sounds, smells that trigger us. There's other drugs addicts can avoid, or the drug paraphernalia, but food addicts have to eat. I mean, if somebody knew that you're recovering from an addiction, say to alcohol, and they really cared about you, would they be saying, come on, just try some, have some, or to cocaine or heroin or anything? Just try some, just have a little bit. But when you're recovering from a food addiction, people do it all the time. Oh, just have one, just one. Okay, don't have any, just taste it. No. Just as somebody that's addicted to alcohol needs to abstain from alcohol, so does someone addicted to sugars, flours, processed foods. Different processed foods are combined into these polysubstance use, which is harder to treat than single substance use. Fast food meals typically contain these sweeteners, flour, gluten, all of these substances that are addictive, and caffeinated drinks in various combinations to get you and keep you addicted. I used to joke about that. I'd go to McDonald's years ago and I would say to my friend, this stuff's addictive. I was joking, only to find out later that it actually was. Sugar's been shown to reach the brain faster and more powerfully than cocaine when it's administered similarly. Rats choose sugar and saccharin over heroin and cocaine. High fructose corn syrup's been shown to act on the body like corn alcohol. Withdrawal syndromes are present. So this is why it's so hard to get through all of that. Caffeine has several diagnoses in the DSM already. Dairy and gluten both contain a natural occurring morphine that acts on the brain like opiates. The symptoms, like I said, last about 2 to 8 days. Headaches, muscle cramps, stomach aches, and so on. A possible explanation: organs and glands can be conditioned to anticipate surges of glucose. The pancreas has sort of a Pavlovian conditioned response. And so it releases insulin at certain times. So if you're used to eating at certain times a day, insulin will be released. You'll want that food, even though you're not really hungry yet. The goal: to keep your glucose levels stable, your circulation up, your muscles relaxed, and your brain calm. Neurotransmitters, brain chemicals, readjust your mood, emotional instability. Coping with withdrawal: prepare clean food only in your house, in your home. Make it available, readily available. Create a routine. Create some new habits. Clear your calendar. So when you're going through withdrawal, don't have other things piled up on your calendar that you need to do. Try to make arrangements for that. Let safe, supportive people around you know, and only let those ones around you. Otherwise, you're going to get the ones that are going to try to tempt you, and of course, you'll be so weak at that time that you'll probably cave, or you may cave. Avoid leaving home or stressful situations. Avoid them. Use hot and cold compresses if you've got headaches. Write affirmations. Things like, I can do this. I am doing this. My body is just detoxing. It will pass. It's just withdrawal. Use bath salts, maybe soak, listen to some nice music, get some extra sleep, find a gentle movement video maybe, listen to calming books, recordings, connect with others. Slips, lapses, 5 steps to get back on track. Well, tell someone that you trust. So when you tell someone that you trust, it moves the blood supply from the addictive part of the brain, which is in the back, to the frontal lobe. See, shame is the lie of addiction. Associate pain to the lapse. Pain aversion is more motivating than chance of pleasure. Mental, physical, emotional pain, the behavioral pain. So associate that with that lapse. Squash the self-blame. All right, it's not your fault. This is something that was set up to get you addicted by big tobacco and big food companies. Unpack why it happened. What was happening at that time? What emotions? What were the triggers? Were you overcued that day? Maybe you didn't have food available. Speak the tweak and plan for the next time that those circumstances will arise. What will you do? Decide what you'll do and speak it out to a trusted person. So these polysubstances and addiction transfer, which is very common. These addiction merchants are not confined only to the processed food company. I have a cat unplugging things behind me. Addiction merchants are not confined to the processed food company. They're everywhere. These neurochemicals are these neuroscientists, neuromarketers are trying to get us addicted, left, right, and center. So when we're removing an addiction, you have to replace it with skills to deal with the emotions, create some new habits, join new communities, create a safe environment, good nourishment, and build the life that you desire. Learn how to turn your thoughts to a safer place. Some common transfers are from alcohol to processed foods. If you've ever been to AA meetings or those type of things, they oftentimes will serve processed food. And it's just from one addiction to another addiction, or from processed foods to drugs, or from drugs to processed foods, from tobacco to processed foods, from processed foods to tobacco, transfer among processed foods from one thing, chocolate bars, to diet bars, from processed foods to behavior addictions like shopping, gambling, gaming, all sorts of purchases, cars, TVs, cutting, compulsive behaviors, anything that overexcites the brain. So monitor your thoughts. Transfer after bariatric surgery, but those with an undiagnosed, untreated processed food addiction. See, the bariatric surgery only gets so far. But if you have not dealt with the processed food addiction, it's still there. Getting into immersion to get you back on track. Create new recovery pathways through neuroplasticity. Wrap your head around big tobacco. It's big tobacco that gave you the big food addiction. It's not your fault, so there's no guilt. Accept that processed food is severe. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. Learn how to incorporate immersion recovery into your life. Get yourself around people that will be supportive. Just good environments, what you listen to, what you watch, what you see, what you have in your home. Surround yourself with people who are skilled at recovery, because you're going to become like the 5 people you hang around with the most, because the mirror neurons, whatever, mirror neurons. So it's like monkey see, monkey do. You see them do it, you do it. Take a long approach to learning the skills needed to defend against addiction corporations and abstinence from the substances. Usually that's how it is. Enjoy life and celebrating endless benefits of living a fulfilled life. And here are the references. So that is it for today. And if you want to know more, please feel free to contact me and I'll explain some more. There you go. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.